First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Nigel Davison. I'm a senior data analyst at BP. I work as part of the big data analytics team. What I want to tell you today is a bit about BP's journey towards a data-driven culture. And there's all sorts of things we're doing towards that. I'm on a journey. We definitely haven't finished, but I can show you some of the things we've done so far. And maybe you can take that away back to your own companies and use those experiences to help drive your journey towards being better in this area. I was catching up with Ed. Ed Hopper's our account manager for Tableau at BP, and we're talking about like, user groups and things for this year, and we're talking about the conference, and he said to me, "Have you thought about speaking at the conference?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. I suppose it's something I could do." He said, "No, you really should. You've got lots of great experiences at BP. Really powerful if you come along and share those experiences." And I thought, why not? For me, Tableau has been quite an impact on my career. I joined BP back in 2011, originally just doing some project analyst, sort of project management kind of stuff, and it was all quite exciting. And I was actually lucky enough to meet my wife in BP. I sort of fell in love and all these sorts of things, life-changing events. And then I fell in love with Tableau, and that for me was another life-changing event. And then we had children with my wife, not Tableau, and that was quite exciting too. And then I sort of thought, actually, Tableau's great, but it's not quite enough. I feel like I've got this great tool, but how do I share this experience with people? And I've set up some Tableau user groups in BP. So running monthly, we set up these sessions where we're sharing and demoing all our different dashboards. People can learn from these experiences. And also getting experts either from Tableau or elsewhere to come in and sort of pick up on sort of specific technology points and so forth. So also doing all these exciting things and sharing that message and making things happen. So that's all very exciting. And that's one of sort of a number of initiatives we're sort of doing in BP to sort of go on this journey. Today, I'm going to talk about these initiatives, some of them a bit more, giving an overview of what we're doing, and I'm happy to sort of take questions on them later on. But we're going to talk about awareness sessions. So something I'll be doing for the last sort of 6-7 months in BP is running these sessions where I introduce this thing about data visualization best practice. For a lot of people, it's new. It's not something they're used to. They're used to years of Excel and PowerPoint, and they know how that world works. Tableau and visualization, well, how does that work? How do I make this work for me in terms of making my business decisions? And what's the opportunity here? And it's trying to sort of introduce people to some of these topics around how do I build visualization, what's impactful, how do I get that message across, and what things do I need to think about when I'm building a visualization. First a quick introduction to BP. You probably know BP from the petrol pumps and the oil rigs, but BP's got a huge amount of operations end to end. I mean, the scale of it is hard to grasp really, from transport to trading operations to manufacturing. We do so many different things. And of course, alongside that, we produce lots of different pieces of data. Here's a few numbers to sort of give you an idea of the scale of BP and the kind of things we're going. And the amount of data we're producing every day is just staggering. And we've got huge data lakes which we've been setting up over the past couple of years, which are taking all this data, enabling us to do exciting things with it. So when I got hold of Tableau, like I said earlier, I was very excited. I was like, wow, it's not Excel. I can do all these exciting things. I can drill into the data. I could do some interactivity. I could do all these different kinds of charts that I couldn't even imagine doing before. And I think that's the project where I was actually picked this first up because we had this legacy application where the inbuilt reporting, it took about 3 months to make a change, and to be honest, it just looked terrible. I'm surprised anyone used it at all. And we was building this new application, and we said, okay, what should we do from a reporting perspective? And I thought, hey, let's use Tableau, it'd be really exciting. And so I got hold of the tool and I started doing all the training on Tableau on the web, and looking up on the blogs, finding out about Stephen Few and Edward Tufte and all these people about what good design is. I was like, oh, these are things all really amazing. And I can remember one of the first meetings I had with one of my stakeholders. And I took them along some of these examples and said, oh, look what we can do with data. And you say, oh, that's quite interesting, but I want to see my numbers. I want to see my table of numbers, because that's what I think referring back to the Jaguar presentation this morning, is what I'm familiar with. I'm familiar to seeing my table of numbers, and that's what I want to see. And for me, that was a bit of a shock. And I was like, look, we've got this brave new world here. Why can't we go and grasp it and do all these exciting things? And I realised, the analogy here, a bit of an oil tanker. How do we change that culture? How do we shift into that new direction, this new mindset? And I knew that I had a bit of a challenge on my hands, that it's not going to just be an overnight switch. Hey, this is a new world, we're going to do this, it's all going to be great. How do you steer people in that direction? And that's a lot around people, capability, culture, and how do you enable these things to happen? So, I'd say we're on a journey. We're doing a whole bunch of things in BP in terms of our strategy. It's definitely one of our key strategies to create this culture and to use the power of data, use the power of analytics to be successful in our business. So how do we go about that change? I'd say communities of practice. So we have communities around Tableau where we share our experiences, people help each other out. We have sort of Yammer forums, we have wikis, we have all these sorts of things. So having that community there and that network gives people some support and inspiration to go and do new things, which is very powerful. We have guides and wikis. So I've directed a lot of these myself, where it's covering all sorts of different topics to help people be successful in what they're trying to do. So we've got one guide, for example, on best practice data visualization. So that's a whole breadth of things in terms of looking at colors and shapes and chart types and all these sorts of decisions. We've got other guides to look at quality. So when I build a dashboard, how do I make sure that in the long run it's going to be sustainable and operational? Thinking about your data sourcing and how the data might change over time and all these sorts of impacts. So again, there's a lot of advice there you can get. Another thing, for example, is Tableau server permissions. So if you're using the Tableau server, how do you set up permissions properly? Especially when you think about it on an enterprise level, how do you do that in a secure way, in an efficient way that's manageable? And again, there's lots of good advice in terms of doing that. So again, it's all about trying to push that information out to the community so they can take advantage of it. One of the new things we've been trying this year is this sort of analytics cafes, and this is kind of what's saying about sort of awareness days. So we're kicking this off with sort of sessions in each of the BP regions, where we sort of introduce the tools and the capabilities that we're offering to sort of a bit of a taster, if you like, to people go, oh, actually, that's something I should really start taking advantage of, and how do I go about doing that? One of the things we're trying to do as well is these cafes where it's almost like a drop-in session. So we're in the process of setting this up in certain places around the world, but effectively, say you're building a dashboard or visualization and you want a bit of help, you can just drop into this cafe. There'll be a couple of experts there who can help you out and give you some advice or point you in the right direction if what you're trying to do is more complex. In terms of sort of more complex things, sort of analytics services. So how do we set up services in each of our businesses so where there's sort of use cases or drive to do something like really analytical or industrialized in terms of reporting, how do I do that? And setting up teams to do that is a key part of our strategy. So these awareness days, we're going to introduce people to these tools, introduce people to these concepts. And as part of this thing is about data visualization best practice. So they're used to Excel, they're used to PowerPoint, but actually when you're talking about visualizations, how do I do that in a successful way? So I'm going to switch tack now. So I'm going to treat you as if you were my audience in BP and present to you what I present to them. So this is an introduction to best practice in data visualization. So why is data visualization making a difference? First of all, it's timely and available. I can go at any point onto the server and see the latest report. and I can get it updated through these automated mechanisms daily or weekly or whatever. So it's not about searching in your Outlook to find the latest Excel or PowerPoint that someone sent me last week. The data's there and then. We're trying to reduce that whole time to market in terms of reporting. We don't want a process that takes 2 weeks for you to produce this PowerPoint deck. By the time you've produced that, it's already out of date. So how do I do that successfully? And these tools enable that kind of thing. It's comprehensive. So if I want to go and search into the data, I want to look at historical data, it's there. It's not just a one snapshot in time and that's all I'm getting. If I want to start being able to answer my own questions, I can do that. Insightful. So I can drill into the data, I can look at trends, I can see what's going on and maybe make some better decisions, because ultimately that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make better decisions with the data to enable our business to perform better, take opportunities and be more efficient and so forth. And analytics and data science. So as we enable these kind of things, we can do more with the data and do things like machine learning and more advanced analytics that again can give us more opportunities to be a successful business. So yeah, if you're building a visualization, what makes a great data viz designer? So I think there's a number of elements. First of all, you've got to be a bit of an artist, so you've got to design something that's visually appealing. You need to be a data analyst, you need to understand your data, you need to be able to work with that data to construct it in the right way to build your visualizations. You need to be a business analyst, you need to be able to work out what you're trying to deliver, what the benefit is, why you're doing it, what's going to make for the business, and is that the right thing to do. Design thinking, how do you get something that's usable and intuitive to use? And ultimately you've got a bit of tool know-how. So if you're building a visualization, how are you how do you get those skills to be able to do that successfully? What is a dashboard? This is actually taken from the big book of dashboards. And right information, right audience, right medium, shortest time possible. It's trying to get that message across in a succinct way and enable people to do the right things with it. And we should always have these sort of concepts in our mind when we're building something. There's all sorts of different types of dashboards. Probably the majority of dashboards we will do in our company are sort of management dashboards. But we might do customer-facing dashboards, there might be more analytic dashboards, and so on and so forth. So again, when you're building your dashboard, think about your audience and what kind of dashboard you're trying to produce. One of the key messages is, there's lots of great things out there. So still like an artist, look at what's on the web, take inspiration, both within our company and outside, because that might give you the right moment to go, if I do it this way, it'll get a better message to my audience. So really take inspiration from what's possible. Just going to switch. Actually, this one first. 2 seconds. So, in terms of these sort of examples, I just want to show you a few and just, again, give you sort of an introduction to looking at what's out there. One of these is a sort of example provided by Tableau, and actually it's quite a powerful example of where just the use of colour can quickly highlight to someone that's looking at the dashboard what they might want to investigate and drill into. In this case, you can quite clearly see in this case that bookcases, there's a big negative profit there. But interestingly, there's a few other red dots there, which actually implies that within that particular subsection, there's further elements to investigate. So tuning into that colour and going, okay, that's something I need to look at, is a key thing to think about when you're building a dashboard. Let me just zoom out a little. So this dashboard is actually from the IMViz, from the Tableau conference last year in Vegas, I think. And this is just another way of looking at the data. But what I really like about this particular one is like the use of a hex map for the states. Also, you could go, hey, it's just not a normal map. it's a different way of looking at the data, and actually the advantage of using this is it gives each state an equal weighting. It doesn't distort what you're trying to look at based on the actual geographic size of the state. So all of a sudden you've got to think about, hey, that's a different way of presenting my data. How does that come across? And all of a sudden, all the interactivity and the ability sort of to click on a particular state and look at what's going on there becomes a lot more intuitive and easier to manage. So this is another example. This is Andy Kribble's reimagining of the finance statement. Income statement. So again, just another way of looking at the data. Does that sometimes, excuse me. So, what you'll probably find though is you'll share this with a lot of stakeholders and they'll go, oh, that doesn't work for me because I'm used to my table of numbers. And often the message I give there actually, it's a hard transition, and what I generally advise to do is give them the table, but then give them some visualizations as well. And over time, they might start to actually use a visualization more than the table of numbers. It's a difficult challenge. So when you're building a visualization, it's very much an iterative design. You've got an initial use case, you've got an initial idea of what you might build, but to be honest, you're probably not sure on all the elements of what's going to be successful. And until you build something and show it and discuss and review what you're trying to do, you get more value from having that constant collaboration. Ultimately, that's going to get you to a better solution. So, my message here is really it's all about continuous collaboration, continuing engaging with your stakeholders and testing and reviewing. And even when you think you've delivered something, you might find further down the line you need to change it. It doesn't stop once you've gone live with the dashboard. So really think about that when you're building a dashboard. It's not a, here's a requirement, you build it, you're done, move on. There's a lot more to consider. This is one of my favorite diagrams. People often ask me, what's the biggest challenge when you're building a visualization? I go, visualization's easy. Getting the data right is the hard part. And I call it a bit of a data iceberg. Trying to get your data in the first place, get it into a structure you can work with, is really where you spend the vast majority of your time. So when you're building visualizations, have that in mind. The other thing is a bit of a data pyramid. So it's great building a data visualization, but how do you make sure that it's sustainable, that your data is being ingested or produced on a regular basis, that it's validated, that it's got integrity so people can trust the data, because ultimately they'll lose trust if your dashboard doesn't have the right data in. So how do you ensure that's in place? Now, I'll just talk about some of the concepts across when you're sort of looking at dashboards. So one of the key things you start thinking about is sort of color and shape and these sorts of things. In this example, you say which orange circle is bigger. I'm sure you all know the answer that they're both exactly the same, but you visually look at this and your mind distorts it. And that's the same when you're looking at dashboards. You've got to be careful about your use of color and your use of shape, because that can be true of dashboards as well. Okay, so let's think about color in a bit more detail. So here's a table of numbers. How many 9s are in this dashboard? Can you tell? Sorry? 17. Oh, very close, but no. Okay, let's use color to make it easier. A lot easier. There's 1 9 in this dashboard. Nice try. So again, instead of having to scan each element that's in this dashboard, your brain has this thing about pre-attentive processing. It can process that color so much quicker. So that's a key thing to think about when you're building a dashboard. Let's sort of explore that a bit more. So I've got a bigger grid, more 9s. Oh, if I use too much color, it's quite overwhelming. That doesn't really help me. So again, single use of color, or the highlighting of using color, makes a big difference to a dashboard. Now let's put it into a bar chart. Again, if I use color, I can sort of look at the look at the categorization on the left-hand side and go, okay, there's my number of 9s. Again, if I use color, it's a lot easier to pick out. And then maybe in terms of placement, if I sort it, I can see that category in relation to the others. So again, thinking about these things makes an impact to how someone perceives the dashboard. Okay, one of the things with data visualization tools is you can do all these exciting new things, and there's all sorts of different charts out there, and you can do all these colors and so forth. And my advice to you is to be really careful, because you can do things that are overwhelming. Actually, for the most part, bar charts, line charts, bullet charts are going to meet the majority of your needs. You can easily create some chart junk, so you just have to be really careful. There's all sorts of issues when you in terms of perception of area when we start looking at different chart types. So let's explore that a little bit more. So we've got some circles on the page. We've got some numbers against a couple of them. I'm sure if we did a survey, which we don't have time for, we could say, what's your estimation for the red circle? And we'd get quite a range of responses. And the problem is that you all probably perceive area slightly differently. It's a lot harder for you to compare that, say, compared to a bar chart where it's just a linear shape. So again, 50 is the red one. If you got that right, well done. So another issue with pie charts is they don't really show a trend or population change over time. So I can see here, in a sense, the percentage of, in this case, number of 9s over the period of several months. But if you compare, say, the March 2017 circle with September 2017, actually, no, that's one's correct. So you compare August and September, the amount of red is the same, but the population has changed. So you've got to be careful using pie charts. They can potentially complement other visualizations, but they can hide other things that are going on in your data. So if we're looking at data over time, traditionally, we'd have a table looking like this, with all the months and the categories, and you see all the numbers. And if I stare at those numbers long enough, I might be able to make some decisions about them. So again, thinking about how we visualize those is important. Again, if I just sort of bring in loads of colors, it's quite hard to sort of pick out anything in particular. So again, if I'm careful with my use of color or the way I highlight what's going on, it can be more powerful. But maybe there's other ways of looking at data. So if I change it to like a running sum over time, I can sort of more clearly see the trends versus the previous charts. So again, playing around with your visualization and looking at how you can present the data is an important thing to do when you're building something. So it might give you insights that you didn't previously consider. Stack bar charts, quite interesting, can be quite popular, but again, you've got to be really careful. In this case, the amount of colour is quite overwhelming, so it's hard to sort of pick out what's going on. So again, if I use colour, it's a lot obvious. I can compare the two categories in a sense and get a sense of trends. But again, with stack bar chart, if what you're looking at's in the middle, it's a lot harder to look at the trend of something that's sort of floating in that bar. So again, thinking about how you use stack bar charts is important. So I could put all those elements together and build a dashboard, give a bit of interactivity to it. I could click on different elements of the dashboards and think. So when you're thinking about all these things, think about what visualizations you want to do, maybe bring some big ass numbers and so on and so forth. There's a lot of things that go into building a dashboard, and just wanted to introduce you to some of these concepts. There's a lot more to learn when it comes to this, but I just wanted to help you start your journey. I'm just going to show a few more dashboards. So one of the things I like about Tableau is the ability to sort of play with the data and try these visualizations out to see what works and what doesn't work. In this case, I've got a couple of customers, and I want to see what sort of my overall margin is with those particular customers, but I've got this sort of exposure that's impacting my ability to make profit with them. And I can look at this and go, okay, a lot going on there, but how do I visualize that? So I can bring this into a series of visualizations and try and play with the data and see what's going on. So I might try initial bar charts and go, okay, it doesn't really tell me anything, but it gives me a sense of the data. So then really it's about iterating and trying different things out. So I might just look at one element to see what's going on there. In this case, sort of looking at the actual margin. And then I might start playing around with colour. So how to look at the exposure versus the underlying margin. Also, it gets more complicated because exposures can be positive or negative. So how do I start working with that? So I can start trying to sort of use some kind of reference lines. You can see here, this attempt, I didn't get it quite right, but it gave me the inspiration for, okay, this is how I might do it in my final version. So this is the final version. And this actually relates to a business problem in BP that we delivered a solution on. Also, I can quite clearly see where I had the red is showing where there's negative exposure and blue where there's positive exposure. So I can quite clearly see for this particular customer what's going on. If we switch to another customer, okay, I can quite clearly see in this particular customer there's a lot of adverse effects going on, and I want to do something about that. But the colour and the way that comes across is a lot more intuitive. So as you iterate through your design and try things out, get some feedback from your stakeholders and so forth, ultimately you're going to get to a better solution. When it comes to visualizations, a big thing is to really consider your audience, and people might not be aware of this, but roughly about sort of 10% of men are colorblind and find it difficult to differentiate between red and green. In this big example, you can see red and green on the bottom versus blue and orange on the top, and on the right-hand side is what a colorblind person would see when they're looking at that particular chart. So when you're building your visualization, that's something to really consider, because your audience probably going to include some people that are colorblind. So really think about that when you're building a visualization. So, as I say, this is a bit of an introduction to data visualization. There's so much more to this topic that we could go into in depth in all sorts of different details. But I just want to sort of introduce you to these concepts, give you some ideas to take away, and start thinking about and exploring. As I say, there's communities here, there's lots of opportunities to learn, and really encourage you to do so. So, as I say, there's many different aspects to think about when you're building a dashboard. Layout, interactivity, navigation. You really got to consider all these factors, ultimately to get the best user experience, but ultimately to make people make the best business decisions and do the right things for our business. So, explore and grow this skill, and good luck on your journey. And unfortunately for you guys, I'm not actually doing this today, but when I do these sessions in BP, we do a bit of a raffle at the end, and we give out a couple of books, one by Stephen Few, one big book of dashboards, and say actually there's lots of great advice out there. Come and find out about it. So, I say that's pretty much the awareness session that I do in BP. I've done that sort of several times. It goes down pretty well and starts making people think about this. And several teams have contacted me after the event to say, actually, that's great. Can you do a more in-depth session, particularly to our team and so forth? So it's really encouraging to sort of see people sort of see the message hit home, and people go, okay, that's something I really need to learn about. This is a new skill, a new way of thinking. How do I go about doing it successfully? I'm happy to sort of take questions now, open up discussion in terms of what I've presented or about the other activities we've done in BP. Equally, if you've got any stories you want to share with the room about what you're doing in your company, I'd be happy to sort of take those as well.
And I have the microphone here to make sure your questions are heard.
Hi, Alessandro from Roche. You mentioned that there are that you have this session with dashboard developers, but I was wondering if you also promote this to business users as a self-service sort of approach.
It's a good question. So the majority of the audiences tend to be IT, I would say, but we have had business people in there. And my intention, I haven't done it yet, is to actually give it to more business users to raise their awareness, because actually that's probably where some of the key messages need to hit home, because there are people asking for these things, but they don't know what they need to be asking for. So again, opening their eyes is an important part of that journey. Yeah.
More questions?
Hey, Dave from VantExclusive.com from Belgium. I have one question for you. How do you follow up with the end user to see if they're really applying all these best practices? In my company, we have this situation now where we're setting up similar groups as what the ones you explained, but then to follow up is really difficult for us. Do you have any experience on it?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. So I think the question is about, you deliver all this great advice, but how do you make sure people are actually following through on it and doing the right things? And to be honest, it's a challenge. I'm not sure we've cracked it yet. What the message I'm giving people is that they need to really get peer review of their dashboards, that getting feedback on what you've done from other people that are doing similar things is actually the best way of getting critique and learning from other people and going, actually, this will get to a better dashboard. So that's, I've pointed out that's the main thing we're trying to do at the moment in terms of getting people to think about that as a part of their process. They don't just go live with a dashboard, that they do some due diligence on what they've done and get some feedback and get to a better solution. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Hi, I'm Yuting from Booking.com. I have a question because you said you have some real-time dashboard, and I'm interested in how do you collect those operational data from sensors and machines. And for example, do you first store it some off-site or on-site somewhere, and then how do you do the data collection and validation, and how do you push it to Tableau?
Okay, that's a complex question. So I guess across BP there's lots of different things like that going on, and I could speak a bit about my area and what we're doing, and none of our stuff is probably real time. If I had one of my colleagues from the upstream area that deals with the oil rigs and exploration, they might be able to answer that question, but I don't know top of my head in terms of real time. I know for a lot of stuff we're doing, it varies. So some solutions we're going directly to a particular data source that's some business warehouse or SQL table or so forth that's updated throughout the day, and we work out what the best situation is in terms of refreshing that or having a live connection to that data to try and get the best situation. A lot of stuff we're doing now is actually we have some data lakes set up. So we have this whole process to ingest data in the data lake and then get it back out again into Tableau to present to the user. And that actually, I'll be honest, a bit of a challenge because that creates this whole pipeline of activity to get the data to here. So I'm not sure we've got all the answers yet. We're trying to evolve how we do that and learn from it, because there's no sort of easy solutions. There's lots of complexities depending on the data, especially when we're doing like the huge volumes of data where we've got like tables of sort of 100 million rows of data. So how do we do that successfully in a way that's we can update each day? So things like delta updates, so rather than just refreshing the whole data set, we just want to take the latest delta, and there's all things going on. So we could talk about offline if you want, and I can maybe point in the direction of people who might know a bit more in terms of sort of more real-time stuff, but it's a challenge, I'll be honest. You're welcome.
Hi, Daniel Graham, Metapack. I was really interested in one of your early points about how, if the sort of spreadsheet Excel approach to things, you will take Excel from people's cold, dead, lifeless fingers, more or less.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're trying to move towards a world where people are much more graphically driven. So if you start with on one side, if you like, your Excel visualization, or Excel number grid, and your visualization is another. I'm really interested in how you transition your user community through that acceptance process of, I like my numbers, but now I can see how this graph is helping me, and actually this is a better way of working. Yeah. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, indeed. So I think you've got different types of users, and it depends. So I did a dashboard recently where we turned something that's quite static and just showed like the last 4 weeks worth of data to something that showed them like the whole trend across the whole year, and they could change the time frame. All of a sudden they got it instantly, and it was great. I didn't have to do anything special for them. And I've definitely had other users where it's a challenge. And I think my point is, you probably can't tear the table out of their hands, so give them the table, but give them some visualization as well. And I've seen it where one of our CFOs, he went to a meeting in Singapore, and he looked at one of the visualizations just going into the meeting, and he instantly saw something, and he walked into the meeting and said, hey, you're my head of trading in Singapore, what's going on here? I've seen this trend, explain it. And I think that was really powerful. So all of a sudden you get these sort of little stories of people doing something exciting with visualization, and that really spreads the message. So it's, like I said, it's not an overnight switch, just through osmosis and through gently pushing it, and some people leading the charge and taking others with them, it will start to happen. But it's a challenge, I agree.
And to add something to that conversation, I'm Aaron Jochen from Redefco, and we have an organization where Excel is the BI tool most used. Well, maybe you can describe in many organizations. We just are going to implement our first dashboard in Tableau. It does not even have very fancy visualizations, because I think there's an important step between visualizing and moving from Excel to that visualization is, okay, dear user, tell me what are you doing with that report that we built for you, which puts out 70 columns of data. Yeah, it gives me insight. Yeah, what kind of insight? Yeah, about my, we are a real estate management company, so about my tenants. Okay, what do you want to see about your tenants? Yeah, the upcoming lease events. Upcoming lease events. So termination of leases, lease breaks. Okay, that's what you want to see. Now, together with a Tableau consultant, we built a dashboard on mobile, because they also said, yeah, I have to have it on my desktop, I have to open a web browser, it's complicated. So we built a dashboard on mobile, just showing some numbers and giving them their first upcoming lease events. They were astonished. We might not be as often professionals also in this room, but these kinds of things will help to move towards visualization of data.
Yeah, no, that's a great story. Thanks for sharing. And I think, yeah, the only other thing I'd add to that is one of the things we've been doing is try and get a lot of our sort of top stakeholders, business leads, to really sort of buy into this and push that message. So it's not just IT or business analysts driving the question, this is something we need to do. It's coming down from the top, saying, to be competitive moving forwards, we need to embrace this and move in this direction. And if you don't do it, you'll get left behind. So I think that's sort of another key message, to work with your senior leads to make that message clear to everyone that this is the direction we're going in.
I think we have two more.
Sure.
Hey, it's Enzo from Fortinet. When you roll out Tableau to Excel users, they often become really excited by the tool, but also, hey, I want a Tableau desktop, and then everyone else wants a license. Of course, when I do that, I try to keep the cost into account. Is that something you also do, or do you actually supply sources on the server to everyone so they can use it, or you just, okay, let's buy a lot of licenses and then just solve it for everyone?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'd say in BP, for the most part, we've tended to have desktop licenses for the IT teams that have been building the dashboards for users. We've got some pockets of users that have just taken the tool and gone with it, but the vast majority, we've had to sort of do it for them and lift them up to that level, and then some of them have then taken ownership of those Tableau dashboards and worked with them moving forwards, but some of them are just, well, I'm too busy doing my business stuff, you look after it for me and I'll just tell you if it needs to be changed. So that's probably my main experience in BP. I mean, I think, think about the new functionality that was demonstrated this morning, with the ability to edit stuff and do new stuff with the Tableau server. I think that's something we might start to try and take advantage of and actually make more of that self-service happen. But I think, to the points we were just making earlier, trying to change that culture to actually even get them to embrace dashboards is first challenge. To get them to actually kind of do it themselves is another challenge. So, yeah, it's an ongoing journey. Hi.
Hi, Matt Francis from the Tableau Wannabe podcast. a little trick that you can use to get people to look at your visualization and move them away from the spreadsheet of all of the columns is do both, publish both, but make it so the default view is the visualization. And have it on the tab that here's the visualization and then here's the underlying data. What that lets people do is they can then trust your visualization. Because what you've actually done, if you don't give them the spreadsheet, you've taken away their data from them and they think they're missing something. Then they've got to trust that you've put all that same data behind that bar or that line. If they've got the underlying data in another tab that clearly says, here is the data, they can go back and look at that. But if you make sure that they have to do that extra step, it weans them off into that. And that's a tactic that we've used a lot that really works.
Yeah, I've definitely done that a few times as well. Actually made me think, what was the, I did that with a cost dashboard for European operations, and you know, I had the nice visualization with the numbers, and he said, okay, I want to see the table, and he's like, good, okay, now I want to see the total of the table, and then I'm going to reconcile to make sure all the numbers add up to the total. Great. I mean, I didn't really want to tell him that, you know, in Tableau that just happens natively, you know, it's not, but he's used to that Excel world, and that's how he thinks. So back to that point about trust, yeah, it's a key thing to think about when you're trying to transition people into this world.
We do have the room for another 15, 20 minutes or so, and in the interest of time, I think a lot of people want to head out and go for the lunches, so we're going to go ahead and hand over token appreciation from the Tableau team to Nigel for coming out and supporting our event. Round of applause for Nigel, please.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think Nigel will be nice enough to stick around for another minute if we have some more questions, but for those of you who want to head out and line up for the lunches, it's okay, right?
Yeah, cool. Best of luck with your Tableau journeys.
Thanks, Nigel.